And good evening to our fellow followers and listeners. Tonight is Monday, September 9th at 8:23 p.m. This is Federico Lines of States Rights Radio and
Seth Hancock of Seth Hancock Reports. And tonight's episode, why are we letting Scotus dictate electoral standards to the states? And a labor union message from both the DNC and GOP. So we're going to start with a recent Supreme Court decision. Was the Republican National Committee versus Mi Familia Vota. It had to deal with Arizona voter registration laws that actually date back to 2004, according to a Vox article that I found on this. That 2004 law required voters to, when registering, to provide documentary proof of citizenship, such as a passport or a birth certificate. It seemed like a little higher standard than other states to prove your citizenship status. And there was later case law in 2013, Arizona v. Intertribal Council of Arizona, that set some new twists in it and everything. But what the recent court decision did is they're basically, the Republicans were asking the court to impose three restrictions contained in a 2022 Arizona state law, which never took effect, and the courts blocked two of those restrictions the GOP was seeking, but allowed one. And essentially, the two that they did not side with the RNC on were that they sought to ban Arizona because of that 2004 law. Arizona has a strange system where if you don't prove your citizenship status, you're allowed to register as a federal only voter, and through federal forms, which we'll discuss that in a bit, but basically sought to ban Arizona's federal-only voters from voting for president, and they sought to bar them from voting by mail. And the majority sided against the RNC on what it was seeking there, but they sided with the RNC to override a 2018 court order that allowed voters who submit the state form without a document proving citizenship to still register as a federal-only voter. So no new voters who submit the state form without the required documentation will not be registered at all now. It's kind of convoluted, but I think the overall, even without the details, is why is the federal government sticking its nose in Arizona's business?
well, quite frankly, Seth, why is the federal courts, the federal government intervening in every single electoral case? This comes where both Republicans and Democrats are not reading the Constitution clearly. They are not reading Article 2 and Article 4, giving the states and the state legislature power to create their electoral standards and codes and how to vote, how to count their votes. Now, I know many people want only U.S. citizens to vote, and that's fine. If you want your state to do that, you can petition your state legislature to let only U.S. citizens vote. I am in the said that you can let every state dictate their policy however they see fit. It's in Article 2, folks. It's enough. Read the Constitution. It's in Article 2. States can do whatever they want, whenever they want, and enact their own standards. So if California wants to give rights to non-citizens, it's California. That's, if New York wants to do it, if Illinois wants to do it, and I believe they've already done it in several of those states. It's that legislature. It's the majority of the legislature, which is mostly Democrat or liberal. And if they want to give rights to non-citizens, then, so be it. I don't see an issue to it, as long as they do it wisely and all that. So it's this thing of this MAGA-ish that only U.S. citizens are allowed to vote. Says who? Congress? No. Read Article 2, Trumpers. It's the states. The states have a right. Now, if your state doesn't want to do it, well, then, so be it. That's what the legislature's for. But if they do it, then that's their problem, their business. So, to see, the federal courts intervening in an electoral case, it's just mind-boggling of sheer ignorance and just, not stupidity, just ignorance that they don't understand. They cannot read the Constitution. So, again, I just don't see why we need to meddle in state elections where they don't need to be meddled. The federal government said it clear in the 15th Amendment. Everybody has a right to vote. Nobody hasn't, there should be no denial of the right to vote with accordance with not violating their race or their color or sexual orientation or whatever, or servitude. But, as far as counting the votes and setting the standards to vote, that's up to each state, not the federal government. Let's get that thing clear right now here. So, people need to understand that. The right to vote is being protected by the federal government, but the counting votes and the setting standards, that's by each state.
Yeah, and, just kind of doing just thinking about this, it just kind of, this whole case kind of, both sides are just trying to maintain this illusion of the importance of voting in federal elections. This is why it's so important to them, is because the president, whoever the president is the most important vote you'll make, which I find ludicrous. Even like the Republican National Committee wanting to ban the Arizona federal-only voters from voting for president, which is obviously because they are trying to protect Trump there. Is that really, you're concerned with protecting the president, but what about the federal Senate and the federal congressmen? I think if there is any importance at all in voting in federal elections, you would rather have a Republican Congress. If you had to choose, you're going to have a split Congress versus president. I would rather have a Republican Congress than Republican president, which there's good evidence as to why, looking at the Clinton time when you had a Republican Congress and you had Clinton as president. There was actually some good movements in the right direction at that time. But yeah, to me, this all just is being done to maintain this illusion of the importance of voting for president. And I don't care one whit who the president is. They're going to be moving the agenda for the power people, the people who want to lord over power over the rest of us, regardless of which one of these criminals gets elected in November. So I just see this as kind of a distraction case.
Well, and just to make that point that you said that, I'm more interested in who controls Congress than the White House, because keep in mind that Congress has the power. The executive branch doesn't really have the power. It's Congress who has the power. So I want Congress to have a full working majority by a conservative movement. mainly the Republicans, but nowadays Republicans are just a bunch of spineless wimps, same as Democrats. So, but yeah, like 95, you had with Bill Clinton and a working majority of a Republican Congress. 1947, Truman versus a Republican Congress, where you had a lot of, with great legislation passed through in 1947. I mean, we saw more conservative legislation passed through in 1947 than 2019. So, you are right that, Arizona, with the crazy lady Carrie Lake, who's trying to defend to get Donald Trump to win those Arizona electoral votes. That ain't gonna happen. Stop protecting a presidential candidate. Presidents don't have power. Why is this question said that they think presidents have all the power in the world? What is this, like, a dictator of Germany or the UK Prime Minister? Even the UK Prime Minister doesn't have that much power. So what is this fascination that people have that they want a powerful president? I just don't get it. Do you, Seth?
Yeah, no, I don't get it at all.
I really don't understand. What is this? So, I mean, bottom line is that, this court should have not even been heard in the Supreme Court. Should have just kicked back to the legislature of Arizona and let it decide by who is going to count those votes in the upcoming election. Because quite honestly, it's not up to the federal government. If there was any, discriminatory intent of a voter, then yeah, I mean, and I know there's been a lot of cases in Arizona where there was an alleged discriminatory intent, but really nothing has been thought through. But as far as that, I don't believe that if like I mentioned before, if Arizona wants to not have non-citizens vote, then that's Arizona. They want to be the racist. That's fine. If like I said, if other states do want to have non-citizens to vote, well, that's their problem, and they will have to deal with it. I'm sure ICE will come to the state and see, and all that, but you can refuse to cooperate with ICE. So again, it's up to that sovereign state to understand. So, I just don't see why we need to continue this charade of who wants to control the electoral standards of a state, because it's not up to the federal government. No matter, it's not up to the federal courts. No matter how Al Gore preached in 2000 or Donald Trump in 2020, the federal courts do not dictate state electoral law. So, it's quite enough. And, the federal government has been trying to undermine Article 2 and Article 4 of the Constitution, that it's quite, sickening. So when I see Republicans seek advice from the federal government, that just sickens me. And, it's so tiring that both sides do this. Democrats will always do it, but Republicans will do it, and that's very sickening. That both sides are just plain ignorant and cannot read a simple document like the Constitution.
Yeah, and that's the sad reality is we just get this distraction, this political theater, that all the focus and attention is on who the president is, and we have a bunch of clowns just leading the circus. And I'll give you an example of just how much power people think the president has. I have a Facebook friend who is the founder of a pro-life organization, and he quite frankly has given Donald Trump a lot of passes on a lot of things over the years. But he recently was just fed up with Trump because of Trump's statement that his administration will be great for women's reproductive rights. So basically, Trump is using all the leftist language when it comes to abortion. And he finally had enough, and he basically said he's not voting for Trump. And obviously it led to a lot of hate and backlash from his supporters. But one comment stood out to me from somebody, and this woman said, people need to understand that this presidential election is vitally important to the world, And she goes on to explain how the president, if Trump does not get elected, that the United Kingdom will no longer exist, that Brazil will no longer exist. I'm like, what is wrong with this lady? What type of power are you putting into the president? Like, it's you think that the president, I mean, it goes back to our Reagan discussion on that movie. They really think that the president rules over the world, and they want that, which is disgusting. It's the president is supposed to be weak, and this is maybe one of the biggest problems is that most Americans, whether left or right, really want a strong president. We got to knock this off. We should want a weak president, somebody who has very little power. But people want this, and that's the most scary part of this election, is that people really are placing so much hope into one position, and it's misplaced hope. And I don't know how to deal with this.
No, I mean, the sad thing is, Seth, is that, Bill Maher even compared President Obama back in 2009 or 2010, when, all he got out of the Affordable Care Act was like an exchange of healthcare, was that, he said, well, this wouldn't happen in China. The chairman of the CCP, I forgot the guy's name, Xi Jinping, forgot that guy's name, the premier of China during Obama's term. He wouldn't need anything but a pen to do whatever he needs to do. And I remember that Obama has, even Obama and Trump has both stated that, Obama stated in a famous speech, I have a pen and I have a phone, and that's all I need. No, that's not all you need. You need Congress to back you up on legislation. And then Trump said in a speech in 2016 that only I can fix this. Wait a minute, only you can fix this? I don't want a Julius Caesar. I don't want a one-man rule. I want a 1,000-man rule that will share ideas and bring forth a good idea for the country or for the states. So, you're right. This lady that says, if Trump loses, what's going to happen to UK or Brazil? That's their problem. Why is it the United States' problem on dictating UK our policy to the UK or Brazil or whoever? I mean, Venezuela is in shambles. Are we gonna prepare a coup, a CIA coup, and get Maduro out? No, that's their problem. They elected Maduro. They elected Chavez in '98. Let them deal with it. Why do we have to come save the world? You're right, like Reagan. We're out there in East Berlin and East Germany making speeches and telling Gorbachev to tear down this wall. Yeah, it's a fancy speech, but why is it our problem? That's their problem. I mean, yeah, it is their problem. They got tangled with Soviet Union, and now they were all there. So why do we have to spend money for that? Why are we looking for a united savior? We're looking for a weak man to be the president of the United States who really has very limited powers in governance. And all of a sudden, they're looking for a man that could sign 1,000 executive orders. They think both the left and the right think that executive orders are legislation. No, they're not. They're not legislation. They shouldn't be legislation, and they should be ruled unconstitutional. But frankly, the Supreme Court is a bunch of spineless wimps since the days of FDR's court. So, you're right. Both sides are looking for a powerful leader in the White House, and that to me is just quite outstanding, quite sad that we are not looking forward a weak president and a powerful Congress, because that's where the power is. Congress. I don't want to be president. There's no right in my mind that I would ever run for president, because in the end you're powerless. You have no power, no matter how many executives you sign or what executives you sign. Your executive orders are powerless and meaningless. And well, with Kamala Harris probably winning in November, we're gonna have our first female president, and she's probably gonna pass executive orders that people are gonna cheer, and of course Trumpers are gonna hate. But you brought this on yourself, both on the left and the right, when you did this. So I'm just gonna sit back and just enjoy the misery, because it's sad. I'm just gonna laugh and cry as Kamala Harris takes the oath of office.
Yeah, and you and I might disagree on who's going to. I think Trump's this election, but it doesn't matter. Regardless of which one of them gets in there, they're going to abuse their power. They're going to abuse the oath of office that they take, we can fix this if the mentality of the American people changes and says, we're not looking for a king, we're looking for a queen. We're looking for public servants who are going to obey their oath to the Constitution, and that is to protect our liberty. It's not to run our lives. And I think that's really the way things change, is a mentality change among the American people. But they keep you distracted with this show for the presidency, and people need to kind of tune that out as much as they can.
I was reading James Madison's selected writings, and, there was a discussion that he made during Congress about the title of the president. And Vice President Adams got his proposal passed through the Senate, but then when James Madison came to the U.S. House and spoke about it in the U.S. House, it got killed. The proposal for VP Adams to call the president His Highness, the President of the United States of America and protector of the rights of the same. I mean, I like John Adams. He was a nice farmer from Massachusetts, from Peacefield, Massachusetts. But to be honest with you, His Highness? Why? This is the man that, was one of the leaders of the independence movement and the Declaration of Independence. To call the president His Highness is just a sheer mockery and an insult to all those soldiers that fought in the Revolutionary War, that they were going to have to call the president His Highness like if he was a king. But James Madison said, no, we need to call him the President of the United States, and that's it. Simple, done. He's a president. He's like he's a lonely bureaucrat. So for people to call the president like His Highness or treat him like a highness, that's an insult to everybody who's fought for freedom and liberty in this country. He's not a king or a queen, soon to be. I know Seth and I disagree, but and it's not His Highness or His Majesty. So enough already. He's just a chief bureaucrat. That's all he is, a chief bureaucrat in the White House, and we shouldn't be helping him win or giving him allegiance or making sure that he gets these votes and not the other one. That's up to each state to do it. And bottom line is, if Arizona wants to do what it wants, then fine by me. It's the state of Arizona, the same thing as the state of Florida, state of Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, etc. It's up to that state, and as long as they don't deny anybody's right to vote, their standards can be whatever they can be. And if they want to include non-citizens, so be it. If Idaho doesn't want to do it, then that's Idaho's problem. But we need to really understand the basics of the Constitution, and that document is for the states. It was made by the states and protector of the states, And it's not, even the Bill of Rights contains individual freedom and states freedom. It doesn't give any federal government freedom. So people need to understand that federal government has no rights. The rights are within the people and the states. So, but we'll see what comes. Tomorrow we'll see the first debate. I'm probably gonna just see the snippets, as well as Seth probably. But we'll see. But on the next segment that we're going to talk about is, this labor union message. A friend of mine sent me an image of this Democrat from Idaho that she burned the National Right to Work survey in effigy and saying that right to work is bad for Idaho. I mean, number one, why is my friend so surprised that Democrats are burning right to work surveys? Well, Democrats have never been for the right to work movement, or have always been pro-labor ever since FDR, give them a big boost. So this is no different. What really kills me is when I see Republicans, J.D. Vance and Donald Trump and a few other ones, be with their labor union buddies at their at the union hall. That is what kills me, because Republicans tend to be more pro-business and anti-labor. So, this thing of labor union message, what are they are they being hypocrites and, being for labor, but not really for labor? So what's the point in this? I don't understand.
Yeah. And I just, this always it's another example of how both sides are the same. You talk about this Democrat who burned a right to work survey, whereas J.D. Vance was out on the picket lines in 2023 with United Auto Workers union members in Ohio. This is not even. I'm not a fan of unions at all. I believe that there should be no public sector unions. I think they should be banned. Private sector, I believe people have the right to organize and whatnot. I'm still not a fan of unions in the private sector, but I wouldn't use the government to stop it. But, in this case with J.D. Vance, he's out there siding with the UAW workers against the business management. Is that what you want? Do you want the politicians picking sides in private disputes? J.D. Vance has no say over which side was right when it came to the union versus management with the UAW. It's not his place to pick sides. It's his place to make sure that laws are upheld and that people's liberties are upheld. This is, it's kind of a disgrace that we're in this place where, we have these laws that protect these union bosses who are unproductive people, and then there are union workers, who join these unions, thinking that the union is fighting for them. They're usually not. The union bosses are fighting for themselves, just like politicians fight for themselves. But we live in this time where you can be forced to join a union that you don't want to join as a stipulation to be able to work. How are people for this? This is just completely antithetical to liberty, and both parties are going to protect the unions. And that's it's just sad to see where we are on this issue, as so many other issues. It's just sad state of affairs in this country, but it's just baffling that people can only see they can only see the Democrats being against right to work. They're all upset about that, and then ignore their own side, and that their own side is exactly the same. We just live in a hypocritical time.
No, yeah, you're right. We are living in a hypocritical time, and it's sad that both parties take the side of union support and labor unionism, and forced unionism, because when I see JD Vance picketing with UAW workers. Is JD Vance gonna beat up a scab if he crosses a picket line? Is he gonna support that violence? Public sector. As you said, public sector unions should not exist. Private sector union, I wish it didn't exist, but yet again, you cannot dictate private industry what to do with its workers. If the employers want to bring in the union to collective bargain, then that's that private employer, and government has no say. But in public sector unions, there's more laziness in the public sector than there is in the private sector. So private sector should not exist. But I just find it very hard to believe that republicanism. The days of Fred Hartley and Robert Taft, two men that fought for workers' rights, and you see the Teamsters boss speak at the GOP convention. That to me, I know I keep repeating that, but that to me shows disgrace to what the Republican Party stands for. And I know when I was working for the Right to Work Committee, I try to help good Republicans get elected because they truly believed in the workers' issue and not the labor issue. And I know some Republicans that did side with unions, and I didn't help them as much because I'm not going to help. I call those scabs because they are in bed with the union votes rather than the workers' votes. So, but it's just we live in a time where it's who can spend more money and who can give me more money. And unfortunately, yes, the labor union does have a lot of money, and so they're gonna spend that in their political PACs, which that's again, that's a different story. They can do that. It's just that it's kind of hypocritical that that money comes from union dues, and again, many union workers don't want to see their money spent on that. But I find it very, one thing, I read a book a long time ago that during the Clinton years, Bill Clinton didn't give a lot of entry to labor unions, but during the Bush years, there was a lot of entry for unions. So Republicans, are a bit of a hypocrite among themselves. And as one last thought, as we saw the Reagan movie, and I forgot that Ronald Reagan was speaking on March 30th, 1981, just hours before his assassination attempt. He was speaking in front of the AFL-CIO, a Republican president speaking in front of the AFL-CIO. That to me was, I forgot. That to me is more traumatizing than him getting shot or him saying Mr. Gorbachev, because that really blows the Republican principle of workers' rights and business rights and giving in to union labor. And, I've always said it. Ronald Reagan was not a conservative. He was just a good actor, giving a good a message of conservatism and liberty. But he was just a scoundrel. Just like every single Republican we've ever seen, they are just scoundrels.
Yeah, and we just gotta understand the role of the government in this issue. Like I said, I think the government should ban public sector unions. Don't think they should be allowed. But in the private sector, the government's role is to make sure law and order is upheld. So, if you have private sector unions going on strike, then you need to make sure that the union strikers are not acting like thugs like they often end up acting like. And so you need to arrest them when they threaten who they call scabs for crossing the picket line. Well, if the private business wants to hire people who are willing to cross the picket line, they have the right to do that. And the union has the right to strike, but the management has the right to bring in other workers to do the job because the job needs to get done. So that's the government's role, is just to make sure that law and order is upheld. And, you want to strike, go right ahead. But we're not going to take sides in that dispute. That's between you and the management. But we just want to make sure law and order is upheld. But instead, we've got both parties cozying up. And it's kind of funny. They kind of cozy up to both sides. They cozy up to management. They cozy up to the union bosses. Meanwhile, our liberties get shot. And, as we're talking about J.D. Vance out on the picket lines with UAW workers, I found this headline that the UAW files labor charges against Elon Musk and Donald Trump for alleged union busting talk. To me, that's just a show. It's a sideshow to kind of, keep up the illusion that the Republicans are against unions, and when clearly they're not. I just think you got a lot of nefarious actors on all sides of these. You have nefarious actors in the government. You have nefarious actors in the unions. And you have nefarious actors in management all working together to kind of keep up this illusion. And nobody wants liberty. And that's what we should always be fighting for. But instead, we get a show.
Yeah, we get a show of who can make the money smile, who can smile more, and for what amount. And it's very, it is quite disturbing and sad that we are living in an age of this hypocrisy and this movement. And I just, it's sad. So, come November, people have criticized Kamala Harris for saying that she thinks all right to work laws should be banned. Well, don't go too far ahead. Donald Trump says that he doesn't agree with the National Right to Work Act because he prefers to have states like Wisconsin have the right to work law, but not New York. That means that he won't be signing for a National Right to Work Act. So both of them are not really for workers' rights. They're just for labor union. And Donald Trump, as a slumlord he was in New York City, he was always bidding out to union contracts. So and for those no-show jobs and show jobs, like the mafia does, he was bidding out those contracts. So Donald Trump is not really pro-business. He's pro-me. And as Seth has pointed out, that he's a showmanship. He's out there for himself and himself only. And the same thing with Kamala Harris. It's just that Kamala Harris will paint the picture that she is pro-union mainly because she has a D next to her name, but that's about it. But I bet you that, if she gets into office, she's not going to deny the unions as much entry as Donald Trump has, or W. Bush, or even Ronald Reagan. So, keep this in mind that Republicans and Democrats, they're just a bunch of hypocrites nowadays. And I have no faith in them, as I never had faith in them ever since, Herbert Hoover walked into the White House. So, come tomorrow for the debate, and we're going to probably discuss it next week. The first debate between Harris and Trump. Just, smile and say these two buffoons are thinking they got my vote. No, they don't have my vote. Neither of them. I'm not going to vote for either of them because I feel that what's the point? It's just two people. It's just two persons trying to achieve who can get the most power and who can scream the loudest. And that to me doesn't get my vote. So come November, I will be abstaining. I will not vote for Trump. I will not give my vote for Harris. I know many people have criticized me, but I don't care. I will just sit back and smile as this country goes to hell because we elect people who will send it to hell.
Yeah, and, I want to make a point, too, that, neither of these people are going to save you from anything. Yes. That's the ultimate point for me, is that we can start fixing the problems in this country if we just get our mentality correct, that the power doesn't lie in Washington. It doesn't lie in the politicians' hands. It lies in our hands, and we have the power to change things in this country right now. We don't need to wait for an election to change things in this country. So as long as we keep thinking that these people are going to be some savior figures, we're doomed to continue down the same path. But if we start taking power into our own hands and fixing our own problems in our own lives, without the coercion of government, we can see a positive change and get back towards the Constitution. But it really is a mentality issue. And, both of the topics we discussed tonight, to me, they just seem like distractions. Keep us distracted. Keep us thinking that, these politicians are saviors. They're not. They're just criminal politicians looking out for their own interests, and we need to start understanding that. But until that time, I'll continue calling out both sides, and mainly I focus on the corruption of Republicans simply because I don't need to expose the Democrats. The Democrats expose themselves, but the Republicans, they are just such big con men and hypocrites that people need to understand how both parties are aligned for the same interests, and that those interests aren't us. It isn't the people. They aren't interested in our liberty. They're interested in themselves. They're interested in big business. They're interested in big labor. They're interested in whatever gets them votes and gives them money. And, we need to stop being distracted.
Yeah, and, to just bring to a close with what Seth said is that, the power lies with us, whether it's through the states or through the individual. Remember that, we have two amendments that give power to individual freedom and power to the state legislatures, power to the states. So, there is no power to the federal government dictating the Bill of Rights. The federal government has no rights. All the rights are within the states or within ourselves, the individual. As stated in the 9th Amendment and the 10th Amendment. And people need to understand that. People need to read back the Constitution. Don't just rely on what Trump says or Harris says or Walz or Enghoff or whoever or Vance. Stop relying on those people to tell you what your power is. Your power is right there, dictated in the Constitution, the 9th Amendment and the 10th Amendment. Again, federal government has no rights. Just because they added the 16th and the 17th doesn't mean that they have those rights. They've never had rights, the federal government. Stop relying on that, because if you stop relying on the federal government, then you can claim some liberty and some individualism that it's already stated in the Constitution. So, in my last conclusion, just, keep doing what you're doing. Stop relying on these politicians to tell you what to do. And, let's move forward as a people and a state as united against this corrupt federal government, whether both Republican or Democrat, and just think for yourselves, know for yourselves, and stop relying on it. How about you, Seth? What's your final say?
Yeah, just, think for yourself. Don't get distracted, and, work together with the people closest to you. The politicians in Washington, D.C., you're never going to meet any of them. Yeah, I mean, even if you do meet them, it's going to be a quick handshake. You never get a chance to talk with your congressman with any serious length of time unless you're part of some well-funded lobbyist group. Organize with the people closest to you and how to protect yourself from the tyranny that both parties are bringing on us. Figure out how to gain dependence or independence where you are and stop being dependent on the federal government. And that's something you can do regardless of how this election shapes out. It doesn't matter. The elections don't matter in the end. It's how you live your life. And you still have freedom as long as you choose to be free.
Exactly. And with that note, hope we'll be back next Sunday or Monday, and with an outline of the first debate of Trump versus Harris to see who's the biggest nincompoop out there, and we'll go from there. And from all of us here, have yourself a great night and a great week ahead.
Good night.